this book jump scared me. That's a very rare thing to do. But I was at work, and at work, it was a Sunday. Sundays are usually quiet. I was back in the back office.
Did you ever have intercourse in this office? Are you serious? Ugh. Where?
And for a whole hour it was quiet. And then all of a sudden a guest just came up and said, "Excuse me." And then I jump scared. I literally jumped. That's how frightened I got. But it's because I was binge reading a lot of these stories in this book, and I just got immersed in it, and then I just got caught out of nowhere and I got scared. Not my most proud moment, very embarrassing, but it shows the effectiveness of this book. Now, you may be wondering, oh, why do you look so sleepy? Why do you look this? It's 4 a.m. currently. I fell asleep at around, I think like 9, and yeah, I woke up at 4. So I got a long day ahead of me of some college stuff, but I thought, hey, I might as well record a video right now because I just got up. So if I ramble at any point, sorry about that. But I thought I had to get this out because I had finished the book, a collection of short, scary stories called Don't Turn the Lights Out. Right? Now, this book is not a scary stories to tell in the dark tribute, I would personally say. Some people went into the review and went into reading this book assuming that it would be a lot like scary stories to tell in the dark. It's not. It's just a big collection of, I'd say, mostly unique scary stories. And I saw Michael Goosebump's fans review of the book.
What?
He thought it was disappointing because he had expected, and he was reading it when the hype was coming out about it being a scary stories tribute and had all these authors tied to it. I'm reading this book much later, so I'm reading this book when the hype has died down. It's been out for a while, and I read it without the expectation it'd be like scary stories to tell in the dark, and I actually enjoyed this collection of short stories. I think there's a lot of good urban legend type short stories in here that do a good job. There are a few modern ones that I thought were pretty good too. And then there are a few like average / meh stories. And then there are very few which are just bad. They're just not good stories at all. But a lot of the stories in here are good. Some of them are very good, which I'll be covering right now. And yeah, I think this was overall a great experience. There's a lot of material in this book to read through. And I think overall you would enjoy it. If you read it blind, you would enjoy this book, and I enjoyed it. So to kick it off, let's talk about the stories in this book that are actually very good in my opinion. The first one that I would like to cover is The Golden Peacock. I'll be giving a short synopsis of each story, but trying not to spoil. The Golden Peacock is about a painting that is passed down within a family. It's like a traditional painting that gets passed down from house to house if you move into a new house within the family, down the generations. And what it's meant to be is a framed golden peacock feather. And as you know, peacock feathers in general have that little circle that kind of resembles an eye. So it's meant to be an eye that overlooks the family. And apparently this painting has ties to a girl who had died, who was like part of ancient Greece or some type of ancient city back then. And what ends up happening is that there's a mother, father, and their daughter. And the daughter starts getting this imaginary friend. And she starts saying the name. And the name of the imaginary friend is the girl who's tied to the painting. And she says that the imaginary friend / ghost potentially is getting more and more aggressive, more and more hateful. And the ending to the story is extremely disturbing, and it ends off in a scary story manner similar to something from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, specifically the third book involving the New York apartment with the poltergeist. A very good story from that trilogy, but you will kind of get an idea of what the ending is like in that case. So yeah, that one's a little bit of a scary story homage, but it's a very good story, and the ending is horrific, but it's very good. A little urban legend, and it was a very creepy put you on your guard because you didn't know what the imaginary friend's gonna do. You don't know what's gonna happen, and you won't predict what's gonna happen. The next story that I thought was pretty good was the Knock Knock Man. The Knock Knock Man is a short, scary story about the urban legend of a man who kidnaps little girls. It's basically like a stranger danger story. And then apparently the mother's sister got kidnapped by this thing, and she warns her daughter, and they find a mirror upstairs, and they hear noises coming from the mirror. The little girl's drawn towards the mirror, and she thinks she can see figures in the mirror, and that's where I'll leave it off. But it's a very good, creepy story. The ending of that's a little bit predictable, but nonetheless, it's a very creepy story. It could be made into a movie for all I care. The next story that popped in my head was it was my favorite story up until a certain story, was the Jingle Jangle Man. The Jingle Jangle Man is very similar to the Jangly Man from Scary Stories movie. It's similar. It gave me similar feels to that one scary story from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which involved the guy who went into the swamp full of monsters and then he got his hand ripped off. I don't know if you remember that one. And then all his friends saw him struggling with something in the dark. That's what it reminded me of. It's very horrific. It's a disgusting story. Jingle Jangle Man is a horrific body horror, disgusting story. I recently read Skeletons in the Closet and Other Scary Stories. This one's a little bit similar to that. And yeah, it's a disgusting story. It's terrifying. Alright, the ending is horrific. And then the very ending to this book is like very morbid. It's like a linear, like a passing on the torch kind of thing, but done in a very dark way. It's a very dark interpretation of that. But it's amazing. That was my favorite story up until another story, which actually I can get into next, is a story called Cries of the Cat. Cries of the Cat is a story about a boy whose grandma, he lives with his mom and dad and his grandma. The grandma's labeled as dangerous, so she has to be taken away. He doesn't know where the parents send her. And then the cat that belongs to her also disappears. And what ends up happening is that he gets afraid because he's like, yo, this cat is a stray cat. It's not going to survive out in the wild. And his parents are like, cats can take care of themselves. Don't worry about it. They keep reassuring him. He keeps getting worried and he starts hearing cat noises. He thinks it's lost. He thinks it may be in the house. They keep reassuring him, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. And then one day they go to work. He decides to investigate the house on his own. And what ends up happening is that he finds that the cat noises are coming from inside the wall. And then he finds that they're coming from inside the basement. And the ending to this book is the most horrific ending I read to a scary story in a while, which is why it's my favorite. You won't predict it. You think you'll predict it. You won't predict it. I can promise you that. It is a horrific ending. Very scary. But...
You had your cigarette.
To fucking scary point.
Very, very effective. And then the last, well, you have other scary stories like the Umbrella Man, who basically that's another kind of story where he rips out the spines of kids and makes them into umbrellas. That's how the beginning of the book starts. And you see him do that, and it's done in a very disgusting, disturbing way. You have the Green Grabber, which is a fun little story. And then the most notable one is the last story, which is Tall Ones, which I really enjoyed. That one to me is like a Cloverfield type of, I don't know, I felt like a Stephen King type of story. That could have been a movie in itself. The Tall Ones would have been a fantastic movie that could have been made. I could easily see that in some Stephen King level budget movie. It could have been amazing. So that one is very good. It's about basically a town who follows tradition of giving out, once a year they give out all these like food and items and gifts because of the tall ones that come to the town, and they have like these markings where it's like triangle. I think it's like triangles with like 4 circles inside of it. It's like a little alien symbol, and they're like these giant aliens that come and they have to leave out gifts, otherwise these things will kidnap people and take away things that mean the most important to you, and they'll take away people so fast that it'll act like they've never been there in the town before. And then a new person comes into town and they have to learn that tradition. So yeah, that was a really good story. Now, as for the not so good stories in this book. There are a few that weren't bad, but they weren't good either. There's a story called Brains. Well, I should know that one was pretty bad. I'll get to it. There's a story about Instagram, but it's called Pixagram in the story. I think it's called Tag You're It. At first, I thought that book was kind of weird. The story was kind of weird because of the whole Instagram trope, but it ended up being very creepy. I just thought that part was a little bit kind of weird. I felt like it was a little bit forced. It's about this guy who ends up getting tagged in all these pictures, and he keeps seeing this creepy doll in every picture, but he doesn't see it in real life. That ended off pretty creepily. Oh, I forgot. There's another really good story I loved called The Girl in Painted Skin, about a guy who adopts this girl. She's homeless, and then he ends up bringing her home, and he ends up finding out she may not be all she seems to be. And that is basically like an Asian folklore story, which was amazing. So I forgot that one as well. But yeah, Pixagram 1 was okay. The ending was very creepy, so I'll give it that. Then there's The House on the Hill. I was not a fan of that story. It just seemed kind of all over the place, and the ending didn't really do much for me. They get this email about getting invited to this house. They go to the house, a haunted house on top of the hill, and you know, it just kind of goes in this weird direction. It's kind of all over the place. I wasn't that big of a fan of it. There's also there's a story about pictures, like old school pictures, and a guy who really likes old school pictures. That one was just very predictable. That one didn't do much for me. That was very, very predictable as to what the ending was going to be. And it was short too, so it wasn't that effective to me. And then I guess we can get into the stories that I was not a fan of. There's a story called Brain Spiders, which has horrible writing. Right? It has horrible characters, and it has horrible writing. I don't know what it is with the way it's written. I don't know if it's trying to be trendy or cool, but it's terrible writing. It's horrible writing, and it just seems out of touch. And the ending is so bad. The ending is just like abrupt and just whatever. Did not do anything at all. That story is not good. What was the story? Oh, I forgot the name of it, but it's about the Day of the Dead and how these people visit Satan or whatever. That was a weird story. It was like the meeting Satan in a trailer park. Very weird story. The ending was kind of whatever. I mean, I guess it's disturbing, but it was just kind of whatever. Even the way the girl talked was just like, I don't know, the way it was written. I think a lot of the time the way it's written for some of these stories, it cuts me off. But then there's also two very bad back-to-back stories, which is actually the worst stories in the book, which is none other than one of them made by R.L. Stine called The Ghost in the Closet. That story is not scary at all. It's meant to be a comedic story, I'm assuming, and the ending is just straight up goofy. It's like some kindergartner level writing. Stine, you folded. I don't know why that story got approved. Maybe just because it's R.L. Stine, they approved it, but that story is not good.
I think I was gonna rate this piece of fucking pig shit, this piece of fucking sausage mixed with rat doo-doo in the jungle's processing plant. Do you think that this is what I was gonna give it, bruh? This story's fucking ass.
Whatsoever, at all. That is a very bad story. Just about some ghost in the closet, and it's from the ghost's POV, and it ends up being some goofy ending. And then the story after that's kind of like a little like rhyme, where it's supposed to be like somebody sneaking up on you in your tent, and it ends up being your little brother, and you just chase after your little brother. That was whatever. It was scary story fashion, but it was whatever. Those are the worst stories I could think of. And then there are just some stories that are like scary, but they didn't really do much for me. The Skellahorse, that was a good story, but yeah, it was just whatever. It was like an urban legend story about this ghost horse. It was pretty disgusting, pretty creepy. Actually, I would rank that story pretty highly. That was pretty good. It was a pretty good story, I would say, for urban legend. A lot of the urban legend stories in this book end up being very good. And then the two first stories in the book, which was Funeral Painting and the Carved Bear, I think the Wooden Bear, those were kind of just average stories. They're the beginning stories in the book, so they might turn you off because they're just sort of whatever. But I would encourage you to ignore, if there are any mediocre stories in the beginning, keep reading, because in the middle portion and the ending portion of the book is when you get to the best stories, and those stories make it really worth it. The beginning is kind of iffy. I don't know why they started off with the best stories later on, because in the beginning is sort of mass stories, but I would encourage you to keep reading, because I would rate this book probably an 8 out of 10. There's a lot of great stories in here that you would enjoy, and it's a lot of scary stories, so you have a lot of material as well to get through and read, and it gives you rereading ability because of the amount of stories. So yeah, that's all it is for my review today. Sorry it feels all over the place because I woke up really early, and on top of that, I read this book some weeks ago, and also there's so many scary stories in this book that it's hard to keep up and remember all of them, but those are the ones that stuck out to me the most. So yeah, I would recommend you read this book. It has a lot of great scary stories. You will enjoy them. The urban legend ones in this book stick out the most, and I think they'll haunt you the most, and I think even some of the new ones do a good job. If there are any bad stories in this book, just understand that this book is written by many different authors, so the author's writing style and what they write about will affect it. Don't take it too much to the book. It's just a collection of different authors making stories, and it works in my opinion. If you don't see it as a Scary Stories tribute, I think you'll enjoy the book, alright? But if you're looking to it as a Scary Stories tribute, I would not treat it as that. There's another book called Skeletons in the Closet and Other Scary Stories, which I'll be reviewing as my next horror book review, and that one is much more of a tribute, so I would recommend reading that. So that's all for today. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to subscribe to the channel, to like this video to help out the algorithm, and comment down below to boost it up. Make sure to share this content around if you enjoyed it. I have other horror reviews coming. Specifically, the next ones in the future will be Skeletons in the Closet, the Mr. Shivers series, and other Goosebumps books that I've already read by now. So get ready for those. And I have other anime and manga content as well that you will feel free to watch through those and enjoy those if you're a fan of those anime and manga series. And that's all for today. So, deuces.
See you out that door, baby, bye.